Coming up, how speeding through roadworks can have devastating consequences. We have graphic CCTV images.
Why it's really worth getting a flu jab, from the woman who nearly died from the virus.
And Birmingham puts its best foot forward with a Westminster showcase. The Ukrainian who came to sow hatred by murdering an elderly Muslim has failed in his evil endeavour. We'll have more details next. Hello and welcome to ITV News Central. On the programme tonight, a terrorist who pleaded guilty to planting bombs outside mosques in the West Midlands failed in his mission to divide communities.
It's actually had the opposite effect, particularly around here. It's actually brought the community together.
Shocking pictures. How drivers are putting road workers at risk.
The mother who nearly died from the flu calls for better take-up of the free flu jab.
And celebrating all things Brummie, why it's Birmingham Day in the capital.
Good evening. Muslim worshippers targeted by a bomber say he failed in his main objective to create racial conflict. Yesterday, Pavlo Lapshin admitted plotting to attack mosques and to the murder of an 82-year-old grandfather.
Today, members of a mosque in Walsall, where Lapshin planted a bomb, said the attack had the opposite effect and had brought the community closer together. Keith Wilkinson reports.
Prayers today at the Aisha Mosque in Walsall. On June the 21st, they were the first of 3 mosques to find themselves on the hit list of a racist bomber. This is Pavlo Lapshin, carrying the bomb in a children's lunchbox. It caused only a small explosion and did little damage. But there is no doubt that Lapshin aimed to kill and maim people. He's admitted to West Midlands Police he wanted to carry out a series of terrorist attacks to cause racial conflict. A later bomb at a mosque in Tipton was packed with nails and came close to causing carnage. And Lapshin has admitted stabbing to death Mohammed Salim while he was walking home from his mosque in Birmingham. Worshippers in Walsall say he failed in his main aim to stir up trouble in the community.
Fortunately, it's actually had the opposite effect, particularly around here. It's actually brought the community together. The mosque was a focal point for the local community anyway. We used to have open days, we still have open days, and the local community are part and parcel of the mosque.
Pavlo Lapshin carried out the murder just 5 days after arriving in England from Ukraine on a student placement. West Midlands Police have said they're confident that whilst he read racist material, he was a lone operator. But here, there are fears that he was linked to an extremist group in Ukraine.
I suspect he's not acting alone. We suspect there is a bigger group behind it, and I'm sure counter-terrorism unit will actually get to the bottom of it.
Pavlo Lapshin is to be sentenced for his crimes on Friday. Keith Wilkinson, ITV News.
Well, speaking from her home in West Bromwich today, the daughter of Mohammed Salim, who was killed by Pavlo Lapshin, told us the attacks were a deliberate campaign of terror against Muslims.
Yeah, I think he's clearly planned this. It's premeditated. He's decided what he's going to do, you know. First of all, he needs to create uproar. How do you create uproar in the Muslim community? You target an elderly Muslim man, which is what he did, you know, and the brutal way that he killed my father as well. And then he went on to bomb the mosques, which he wasn't as successful with. And as the police have stated that he had enough equipment in his room to do another 3 bombings. So, you know, he's targeting Muslims. He wasn't targeting non-whites as such. My father was targeted because he was a Muslim, not because he was brown.
A mother from Warwickshire who almost died after catching flu is urging people to have the flu vaccination. Louise Lyle was admitted to hospital just before Christmas 2010. She spent 4 weeks in a coma and didn't return home until 2 months later.
Those in certain risk groups can get the flu jab for free. So Louise Lyle wants people to make sure they have it and for others to consider paying for it. Charlotte Grant's been to meet Louise and her husband.
I was incredibly lucky. The odds were stacked against me, definitely. I don't know why I did survive it, but thank goodness I did.
Louise Lyle is a flu survivor. At first she thought it was just a cold, but she ended up in hospital. Within 24 hours, things became very serious.
Fully ventilated, on dialysis, on full life support, and unfortunately, pretty early on in that, I was told that they'd done everything they could and I wasn't responding, and the family were prepared to come and say their goodbyes because I wasn't expected to survive. And it turned out I had the flu.
Louise was admitted just before Christmas. She would not leave until the middle of February. Half of that time she was in a medically induced coma.
When the consultant said, we're going to have to put Louise on a ventilator, when you hear your wife say, "What if I don't wake up?" That's when it really hit me, and that's when the sheer terror, I became to realise it, and I nearly lost my wife. My children nearly lost their mother.
Nearly 3 years on, Louise has slowly recovered, but every year she has a flu jab, and she believes others should do the same. Even if someone is not eligible to have it for free, Louise says paying for it is something to consider.
It's something to protect yourself against, and it's out there. You can go and have relatively painless little injection. You might have a sore arm for a few days, but compared to the months I spent in hospital, it's certainly the easier option. It took me so long to regain my strength, and now it's just about the family and having relative normality. I'm back to work. We enjoy the little things in life, definitely.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Nadia Ingalls, who works as a public health specialist in Coventry and Warwickshire. Dr. Ingalls, it's obviously a very powerful story there with Louise, and people will be quite surprised that you can almost die from flu, because that's not necessarily how we see flu. We see it as perhaps a very bad cold. How common is that type of flu?
Yes, I think you're right that Louise's story is very powerful, and it brings home to us the message that although flu is a mild illness for most people, for people in risk groups, and also for a small number of people who were previously healthy, it can be a very serious illness and even fatal. And there are thousands of deaths every year due to seasonal flu, and that's why we're encouraging everybody in the risk groups who are eligible for the flu vaccine to please book in today.
And who exactly are the risk groups?
Anybody who's aged 65 years and over, people who have certain conditions like diabetes, people who have chronic respiratory illnesses like asthma, which needs to be controlled with a brown inhaler or a steroid inhaler, people with chronic bronchitis, anybody with chronic heart, kidney or liver disease, certain neurological conditions, as well as people with weakened immune systems due to disease or treatments that they may be taking. We're also encouraging pregnant women at any stage of pregnancy to make sure that they're vaccinated to protect themselves and their baby in the first few months of their life, as well as carers for vulnerable people.
And what sort of symptoms are we looking at? Because as most of us think, a cold could well be the beginning of a flu, but we just dismiss it, really.
That's right. I think sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish between the flu and colds, but symptoms include respiratory symptoms, a runny nose, cough, sore throat, fever, muscle aches, and it can actually mean that people need to stay in bed for several days and mean that they need to take time off work, and children time off school or nursery.
Now let's just talk about the children for the moment, young children, because they're eligible for the first time to have an oral immunisation?
It's a nasal flu vaccine that for the first time this year is being offered to all children aged 2 and 3 years old. It's envisaged that over the next few years all children will be vaccinated. This year it's been offered for 2 and 3 year olds, and it's a simple nasal flu spray vaccine which has been used in other countries for several years.
Possible side effects?
Any side effects reported are generally minor and can include feeling a little bit unwell and some minor respiratory symptoms. As I say, it has been used in several other countries for several years prior to this. We know that flu spreads very easily in nursery, childcare and school settings, and can mean that children are off school or off nursery for several days, and parents and carers also have to take time off work, and it can also be a serious illness, particularly in children who have got chronic conditions.
Okay. Dr. Ingalls, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Police are continuing to question a father and grandmother arrested on suspicion of kidnap and attempted child abduction. Naila and Suleiman Khan were taken from a hotel in Stoke-on-Trent on Friday and found at a hotel in Derby at around 7 o'clock last night. Their father, Salim Tahir, and 67-year-old grandmother, Denise Smith-Sellers, are being questioned by Staffordshire Police.
Elsewhere, police investigating the death of a woman found in a street in Warwickshire are trying to find her mobile phone and handbag. Patricia Dornan, who was 39, was found dead in Rugby on Thursday. A woman arrested in connection with her death has been released on bail.
The family of a young mother who held her newborn son for just a few minutes before she died from a rare heart condition is giving their backing to a Midlands charity which wants to open a treatment centre in Birmingham.
21-year-old Hannah Michelle Brown gave birth to her son Gowan by emergency caesarean at a hospital in Wales, but was transferred to Birmingham's Queen Elizabeth Hospital after she suffered a cardiac arrest and went into a coma. She woke up 4 weeks later and held her son for a few moments before relapsing. She died shortly afterwards.
Now her family have pledged their support for the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Birmingham charity, which is planning to build a £1 million research and treatment facility in the hospital grounds.
It's going to be a unique facility for the UK, somewhere where world-class clinicians and researchers can work together hand in hand with patients and their families to try and find a cure for some of these rare conditions.
If I can save one person out of all this, it would mean so much, because then they wouldn't have to go through the heartache that we have had to go through as a family.
A road worker has told ITV News how his life changed dramatically after he was hit when a driver smashed into traffic in roadworks. Gordon Davis was on the carriageway clearing up after an earlier crash.
He can now no longer work, and his wife says she's lost the man she married. They spoke to us today as the Highways Agency started a campaign to get drivers to go slowly through roadworks. Mark Goff reports.
Watch the bottom right of your screen. These are real crashes in roadworks, and it's not just drivers who get hurt. Gordon Davis was a maintenance worker. His life changed in March last year when the driver of this white van went round a bend in fog and hit other cars, pushing them into Gordon.
Vertebrae was chipped, fractured skull, bleed on the brain, damage to my right eye, shoulder blade, collarbone, 2 to 7 ribs, all broken.
The Highways Agency wants drivers to go slowly through roadworks. For Gordon and his wife from Eccleshall in Staffordshire, the consequences of not doing so have been huge.
He used to get very nasty mood swings and he'd take it out on me, but I just used to go and turn the shower on and have a cry, so he didn't know I was doing it, because it's not him. I won't get back the man I married, because he's a completely different person now. He's more reliant on me than ever. I had to do everything for him, from showering him, drying him, manicuring his nails, cutting his food up. It must have been so embarrassing and awkward for him, because he's a proud man. No man should have to go through that, whether it's being done by his wife or anybody.
Gordon was determined to get better. His target, to walk his daughter down the aisle. He has a message for drivers who see roadworks or road workers.
Just slow down, just take your foot off a little bit, you know. It's all you've got to do. You're not going to lose anything by doing that, but you're going to be a little bit more aware of who's around and who's about.
For every person that works on the road, there is a family behind that person. And you hit that person, it's not just them you hurt and you hit, it's the family.
The driver who hit Gordon was fined £200 and banned for 6 months. Gordon will never work again. Mark Goff, ITV News, Staffordshire.
The Al Medina Islamic School in Derby has reached its second deadline for improvements today. A report earlier this month called on the school trust to make urgent changes to education and management policies or face losing government funding. The school, which has more than 400 pupils, came under fire after some staff claimed they were being forced to wear Muslim dress regardless of their beliefs.
A campaign is being launched in Leicester urging people to dispose of their household waste responsibly rather than fly tip. The month-long campaign will focus on helping people who fall prey to rogue firms who charge householders to dispose of waste before dumping it illegally. Last year, Leicester City Council spent over £250,000 cleaning up after fly tippers.
Still to come here on ITV News Central. Balties and businesses. Why firms are celebrating Birmingham Day with a showcase in the capital.
And in the weather, some rather lively activity before tomorrow morning. For all the details, join me a bit later in the programme.
Also coming up later, the national and international news. Let's take a look at what's coming up now with Mary Nightingale.
An inquest decides a pregnant woman who was stabbed to death with her toddler son was failed by police. Rachel Slack was killed by her ex-boyfriend, who'd been released despite threatening to take her life. The Prime Minister calls on Facebook to explain to parents why it's decided to allow beheading videos. And after hanging up his hairdryers, Alex Ferguson tells us why he forced David Beckham out at Manchester United. Join Alistair Stewart and me for that and more at 6:30.
Now, here in the West Midlands, we know about everything that Birmingham has to offer. But does everyone else?
Today, the fastest growing city in Europe with a world-class manufacturing base has been bigging itself up to MPs at Westminster. Our political correspondent Alison Mackenzie reports.
Making sense of politics, a different view on the world from the young people of Birmingham taking part in the Celebrate the City event in Parliament today.
No, let me start this from the beginning.
Don't bash Birmingham, love Birmingham.
For starters, why do we call ourselves the second city? We're not. There's a capital called London, and after that, we're the first city.
A world-class orchestra, world-class research and medical care. Also on show today, traders, exporters and businesses from Allen Rock.
And we're very lucky in Birmingham because it is those vibrant local centres in which you can get the diversified products, you can meet a lot of independent businesses that are investing within the local economy, training, taking on new apprenticeships day in, day out. But more importantly, you can buy everything in Birmingham.
Now, it may be his job, but the Minister for Cities, Greg Clark, was insisting he is impressed.
We know that when it comes to jobs and investment, it's not just countries competing with other countries, cities are competing with other cities. And so for Birmingham to really shout from the rooftops about the strengths that are clearly visible here today is absolutely the right thing.
40% of the city is under the age of 25. Among those there today, Lauren Williams, the young poet laureate, with an anti-war message.
Tears cried by many, for many, too many enemies, too many bombs.
A positive day which they hope will bring positive results for Birmingham. Alison Mackenzie, ITV News, Westminster.
Great stuff. Now, cast your mind back to the summer. You'll recall that all that glorious weather, and it was good news for farmers and gardeners, but also came as a welcome relief to the region's wine producers.
It certainly did, because last year it was a disaster, with grape harvests at an all-time low. Brewers were also hit by the wet conditions. Ken Goodwin reports on how the changing weather has been affecting their business.
Last summer, we had this. This summer, things were better. We've seen how the previous season's wet summer affected the things we grow to eat. But how did it and the contrasting summer this year affect what we drink? Tucked away in a back street in Cheltenham is the Battledown Brewery.
Just digging out the spent grain. After we've brewed, we've washed out all the sugars, everything out of these that we need.
The barley and the hops it uses are all British, so brewing the beer can be affected by our climate.
Thin, low in carbohydrate, high in nitrogen, proteins. Dreadful brewing barley from last year. It was probably the worst year in living memory. This year, spectacularly different. We've had a year when the weather has given us a bumper crop, nice fat grain. We'll notice the difference within the next 3 or 4 weeks as the 2013 crop starts coming in. We'll notice that per sack of grain our yields will be higher.
It's harvest time at the Three Quires vineyard near Newent.
And the grapes drop through the destemmer into the hopper at the bottom, and they're pumped up and into the press behind.
Grapes like warmth and sunlight, two things in short supply last summer. But this year, though the summer got off to a slow start, there are more grapes and they are of better quality.
As you can see, small, but for wine grapes, they're absolutely ideal. Oh, the yield is probably 3 to 4 times what we had last year. And certainly the quality is much improved as well. Yes, I think there will be varieties this year that will have performed pretty well.
Two people who are both raising a glass to this year's summer and hoping we won't get another like last year's.
Well, I'm getting a number of different things, but I think predominantly lychee, a little bit of elderflower, and perhaps something a little bit more greeny, something like newly cut nettles.
That's when you get the sort of rounded, sweeter flavours from the barley, sort of slightly bready flavours.
Ken Goodwin, ITV News, Gloucestershire.
Well, they looked like they were having fun, didn't they?
Of course they
Enjoying
were.
those wines and beers. Anyway, Emma is with us now. Emma, that was a reminder how lovely the weather was. We had all that glorious sunshine, and now we've got rain, bucket loads even.
I know, yes, easy for you to say. It was, yes, it's all spinning up to us at the moment. But the funny thing is that nobody really perceives it as being that bad because it's still remarkably mild. And you know, in some parts of the country last night, they had their second warmest October night on record. And I mean, we're particularly talking about the southeast. There wasn't a massive difference for our part of the world. There were a couple of degrees difference between last night's temperature and the record. But down in the southeast, in Hurstmonceux in East Sussex, they were within 0.1 Celsius of the warmest October night, which was in 2005. So yeah, it was really hot in some places, and these mild temperatures are continuing. The unsettled weather's continuing for the foreseeable future. And for our part of the world last night, we were 14.8 Celsius in Shawbury. The record was 16.5, which was in 2011. But it looks like everything's just set to continue. The jet stream is in very much the same position as it was this time last week.
Which is not bad for October, really, is it? We shouldn't moan.
It's not too bad, but I have to say that for the forecastable future, we cannot see any sign of any let-up in the unsettled weather, really. There might be odd little gaps here and there, but nothing that's really going to make our day, I'm afraid. So, shall I give you all the gory details? I think I should. Let's take a look. Here's the forecast. Hello there. Well, tonight's picture shows some very cloudy skies. A cold front crossed today. It was a bit like a worn-out old dishcloth, though. It's rather ragged. There were some holes in the front, and so some of us will have seen some brighter spells this afternoon. But on the whole, lots of clouds staying with us, and the unsettled weather never too far away over the next few days. And yes, the winds stay with us as well. But we have these very mild temperatures. This morning's temperatures varied very little from this afternoon's values, and it's because the air's coming from that mild, moist, southwesterly direction there from the Azores Azores, pulling up from the Bay of Biscay. Then overnight tonight we have this very vigorous occlusion which is going to push through. It's got hail on it, it's got thunder on it, some heavy persistent rain as well. But I think until midnight it will be fairly dry, and then after midnight through the early hours in comes this system. Like I say, it could be quite heavy. There could be some heavy persistent showers on it. The rain will move through quite quickly, maybe in 1 to 2 hours, but then showers will follow on behind, so the worst of it moves through quite quickly. Strong winds and also temperatures continuing to hold up. Into tomorrow morning, a few showers left, but there will be a marked improvement after midday. A bit of a windy, damp start, but after lunchtime and then by about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there'll be some really good spells of sunshine. The wind will ease down as well, so not a bad feeling end to the day. Thursday starts a bit cooler than it has done of late, but we've got all the details for the outlook on our website. Don't forget to visit. Bye-bye.
Now, just before we go, a reminder of today's top stories on ITV News Central. Muslim worshippers targeted by a bomber say his attempts to divide communities in the West Midlands failed. They say Pavlo Lapshin, who admitted plotting to attack mosques, had actually brought the community closer together.
Thousands of Midlanders could be putting their lives at unnecessary risk this winter by not taking advantage of their free flu vaccination. It comes as 2- and 3-year-olds are now being given the vaccination.
And the Highways Agency has launched a campaign to get motorists to drive more slowly through roadworks. Today, a road worker told us how his life changed dramatically after he was hit by a driver smashing into roadworks.
Now for more on the day's stories, as well as some very adorable pictures of the South American bush dogs born at Twycross Zoo. Yes, just visit our website at itv.com/central.
They look very cute, don't they? That is all we've got time for tonight. I'm back with an update at 10:30. Hope you can join me then.
We're back tomorrow at 6. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.